Well, Texas made it interesting. Not exactly great late game execution here with a game on the line. No timeouts. Quinn Ewers throws it deep, down by 7. Casey Kane makes the catch, but clock at 0, and Washington wins the Alamo Bowl 27-20. This marks the 5th loss this season for the Longhorns by a touchdown or less. That ties a program record for the most losses by a touchdown or less in a single season in the AP poll era. The last time they did that was 2016. With that, hello and welcome to Texas Game Day Final. This is final for Texas Game Day of the season. Griff, you've hung it out, man. You're almost there. 1 hour left, buddy. 1 hour left. We got B-Rob. We got Fozzie as well. Hey, this game, right, we saw some good, we saw some bad. Obvious, the bad, Texas not finding a way to win this game. But at the same time, Quinn Ewers has a historic performance for a freshman quarterback in a bowl game and sneakily put together a really, really good game. What's your biggest takeaway, though, from this performance?
Yeah, I think Quinn Ewers obviously showed something that we were looking for. He commanded the offense very well. Obviously, some of the late game execution wasn't probably what people wanted to see. But throughout the course of the game, I thought he was very composed. We saw him use his legs, like I said earlier, getting outside the pocket, being able to make some plays, some of the off-balance throws. But ultimately played a great game. Would have loved to see him obviously get into the end zone a little bit more, but I thought this was something that he could build off of in the offseason heading into 2023.
Yeah, I think one emphasis that's going to have to be hit on in the offseason is situational awareness. I think when you look at it, not only just there at the end of the game, but just in certain situations throughout the ball game, you just don't see, we talked about earlier, how they're lackadaisical. When
they're down by 17.
You got to get moving. You got to get things going. So that situational awareness there, and then obviously we saw no Bijan, no Roshan. That is going to have to be a key in the offseason, is getting that running game back where it needs to be.
The biggest thing, like I said, is it's a young team, and not necessarily on the defense side of the ball, but the offense side of the ball. You can see they're young. You say the situational awareness. That's a young team that does not understand that. You're talking about you cannot give up a sack right there at the end. That's a young situation. That's a young team. That's a young quarterback. You're talking about the drops when there's pressure. That's when you say that's a young team. So I think the biggest thing is definitely a good point right now to emphasize that, hey, listen, now this is your team. This is where y'all have to figure this out. This is where the offseason counts, where you're working out together, where you're going out throwing the ball, just trying to understand, hey, let's just get a better understanding of one another and say, hey, we can get on the same page. But you could definitely see that right there towards the end. Can they get over that hump without a Bijan, without a Roshan? You can see that this is a young offensive team, and you can hopefully say that, hey, going into the offseason, it's time for them to take that next step.
Yeah, I want to see a little more sense of urgency when it was a 17-point game there, and it came back to bite them. Ultimately did not have enough time with no timeouts at the end of the game. But Quinn Ewers puts up 369 yards, 31 of 47, 1 touchdown, turnover-free football, really protected pretty well. I mean, I think that was the 2nd sack at the end of the game. So 1 sack when he wasn't completely under duress because of the situation at hand. Major Applewhite with 473 through the air in the 2001 Holiday Bowl, the last time Texas played UW. So it looks like that's something for Texas to build around potentially, or at least give the coaching staff and Quinn Ewers confidence going into the offseason that this is going to be a dogfight with him and Arch Manning. Maybe it won't be. I mean, maybe this is what propels Quinn to take that next step, because we've said all along, there is going to be a huge difference between your number 1 in the system and your number 2 for Quinn Ewers. You brought it up multiple times watching him. It looked like he just started to let it go, and it was more along the lines of the quarterback and Quinn Ewers that we saw at the beginning of the season compared to the one that was completing 50% of his passes in the last 5 games leading up to this.
Yeah, he didn't press the issue tonight, and that was what you wanted to see with Quinn all year long, is stop pressing for the deep ball. Take what the defense gave you. Tonight, the defense gave them those slant routes. They gave them those crossing routes. They gave the quick outside of the backfield. And guess what? He took it, which allowed him to, we saw later in the game, those deep throws became open, and he was able to hit on target. We had a couple drops, but that's the deal. If you can play that type of football game and get the running game going, this offense can be really, really special.
Because I would say ultimately that's winning football from Quinn Ewers.
Yes.
Because you don't want to drive the bus over a guy, right? But the drops by Xavier Worthy, I mean, that's a game changer. That's a game changer right here. Multiple throws. that Quinn put on the money to Worthy. One was a walk-in touchdown, and it was dropped. You get some of those drops back, and that is winning football from Quinn Ewers. There's no doubt.
And that's the thing we kept saying, and we said this earlier. I said you can't put the blame solely on one player as the quarterback and saying what happened earlier in the season with 50%. It fell upon everybody's shoulders, and this right here shows right here. 3 drops right there are definitely crucial, and it goes back, like I said, it's a young team. When you're telling them that, hey, listen, there's no more Bijan, there's no more Roshan, somebody else has to take that next step and be that guy. And again, kudos to Cade. I mean, he had a rough season, but to see him step up today and see him be able to make us a couple of plays a day, that definitely says that's something that you could build upon going into the offseason.
And on the flip side of that, there was a 4th and 1 where Worthy was wide open and Ewers simply missed him.
Yeah.
So it is that balance, right?
It's definitely a balance. I mean, it's just working all cylinders, but at the same time,
but you're so close.
You're so close, and you say this, and yes, you don't want to say this so close or what ifs and everything else, the moral victories. But again, watching this game, you see there's some positives. Yes, there is negatives, but there's definitely positives that you can build on with your younger guys going into the offseason.
Because ultimately, it's a close loss against a really good football team. But that's what we've seen all season long.
Right.
No doubt, though, step in the right direction. When you're going from 5-7 a year ago to 8-5, very close to being a 9-win team. I mean, 8 wins back in the day when you guys were playing, that was a down year. But let's face it, they had an opportunity for the second time in 10 years to win 9 games. The bar, I don't want to say has been adjusted by us and it's lower, but the past 10 years are nowhere near the previous 10 years of the Mac Brown heyday. And so when you compare it to what this program's been going through, this is really an above-average season by Steve Sarkisian in year number 2, and you can see the bright spots going forward.
Absolutely. You're obviously looking for the positives, and year over year, we saw tremendous growth, and the defense was probably the biggest indication of where this team could possibly go. Still have, obviously, major concerns. You look at last year, the 5-7, the way that they lost games, and then even this year, the same way that they lost games, losing the lead, and then losing now those single possession score games. Like that's a point of emphasis that I feel like Sark and his staff will need to address in order to obviously grow and continue to get a little bit more mature so that his teams in the future know how to handle those situations, because right now they haven't been there before and they haven't won in those types of situations enough to be able to make it a repeatable process.
And just think about,
and I would say this, and let's go back and we could both talk about this. As a freshman, a redshirt freshman, we went down to Washington. We went to the Holiday Bowl, and we went and lost to Washington State, and they demolished us. We could not stop the run. We couldn't do absolutely nothing. But then the following year, you come back, we still can't get over the hump versus OU. We lose 12-0 to a freshman, Adrian Peterson. But we still managed to go to the Rose Bowl, which everybody questioned were we really supposed to be there or not. And we end up proving that we had to have dogfight again, and we end up winning that game, which then propelled us to go the following year to an undefeated season, which allowed us to win the national championship. So when you look at those and you start comparing those, we were a team that was very similar. We lost to Arkansas. We lost to Washington. We lost to OU. We lost those games, but we had to learn as a young team. Young Vince Young. Cedric Benson was older, but Derek Johnson was. We had to learn when the older guys like Nathan Vasher left, when the guys that were on defense that were older. We had to learn how to win. When Roy Williams and everybody was, we had to learn. And I say that to say, hopefully, this tells them after last year, you lose a Bijan, you lose a Roshan. Now the younger guys start learning how to be winners, how to get over that hump.
And that's a great point, because you go back to the beginning of Mac Brown's era, right? Program ultimately took an initial step back post-Ricky, but very quickly found a new brand of football, found a new identity, and started to steamroll opponents. So this offseason and next season will be critical for Steve Sarkisian to define where this program goes next, because this, I think, is safe to say at this point. It's not going to be a ground and pound type offense that it was a year ago this season, right? Because you don't have those leaders in Bijan and Roshan. And there was real opportunity for Keelan and Jonathan Brooks tonight. And I don't want to say they didn't take advantage of it. They were very effective in the pass game as well. but it wasn't a clear-cut answer to what is the running game going to look like without Bijan, and is it going to be effective? It's going to be a different brand of football, and it could be now more put on the quarterback, whoever that is, whether it is Quinn Ewers getting the starts in season number 2 for him, or an Arch Manning coming in immediately to compete for playing time. It is going to look different, and more is probably going to be put on whoever's at that quarterback spot.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, you're going to have to find a way to balance that. And, you know, it's okay if it's a little bit more pass heavy or it's a little bit more run heavy, but when you have an offense, unless you're Washington, that is really, really pass heavy, what's the difference? Washington has 2, 3 receivers, 4 receivers they can throw to. Maybe we have that next year with some of these incoming guys coming in. You got Xavier Worthy, you pair them up with a couple of the younger guys. Maybe
get Nair back.
Yeah, you get Nair back. I mean, maybe that's what ends up happening. But until you get that plethora of receivers like Sark had when he was offensive coordinator at Alabama, you can't be a pass-heavy offense. And you can't expect a win. Because then you start putting pressure on your quarterback, and your quarterback starts we saw it during the season, right? What happened was they got back to the run, they established the run, and they were able to be successful. I'm not saying you can do that next year, but you can alleviate some of that stress off of your quarterback by establishing some sort of run game.
So how did the run game look overall? Keelan got the lion's share of the carries. Jonathan Brooks had his moments, didn't see any of Jaden Blue. How did you think it looked and played out?
I think the hardest part is, and I think, and I go to say this because it's a different type of runners behind you. It's not the 215, 225-pound running backs behind you. So they're different backs. So I think that's where, even though you did have this off time, you still never played actual meaningful time. You never really got to scrimmage anybody outside of your own defense. And the practice that I did go to, the defense had the upper hand on the offense, which is definitely good competition. But again, when I looked at it today, you can see that it just doesn't look on one accord. It just looks like it's off. And I say that because it's been ran one way for the last 2 years, and now it just changes. And they're different style. They're running backs, but different style of backs. And I think that's where it comes to Sarkisian, is figuring out what's the best type of runs for these running backs compared to what you did. And we know that Roshan and Bijan, they ran different style of plays when it came to those 2 running backs. We knew that Roshan was downhill, one cut, straight hill. Bijan could do a little bit more to make a 3-yard run look like it should have been a 10-yard. But we still don't know what type of running backs he's on when it comes to 20-plus carries a game.
There's also a reason why great players are great, right? Like, we need to give more credit to Bijan and what made him be special. If it was that easy, every running back playing the game would be special. Bijan is a generational talent, and unfortunately, it's not going to be that easy to find the exact type of production.
So here's the deal, and I'm going to put both of what both of you are saying together. To me, what I saw tonight is you got a linebacker that shoots the gap, or you got a D lineman that comes free. When you get used to Bijan back there, you're just like, okay, I'll just go pick up the next guy. Well, guess what? You don't have Bijan back there. Guess what? Tackle for loss.
Mm-hmm. But I say that to say, over the course of time, you get better as the season.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to say, the Bijan that we saw for the fourth quarter of the season is not the same Bijan when we saw he was trying to jump over Texas Tech players. He had to learn what he could and what he couldn't do. He had to learn what he was great at and what he had to work on. We can even go back to the OU game when we were talking about Roshan, when you said learning how to pass block. This season, who was the best pass blocker? You had to learn that, and that came with experience. So I say that to say, yes, the guys got in jump time on a lot of these teams. Is it their fault? No. You had 2 great running backs in front of you. But they're going to have to learn. The offense is going to have to learn to work together and how to understand it. And I even go back, we're going to go back. The offense had to learn to work when Vince Young was at the quarterback position and when Chance Mock was at the quarterback position. It was 2 different, in the running back position, even evolutionized to a Jamal Charles and being in shotgun every play compared to Cedric Benson being at the I back or Rick. You have to learn what type of players you have and understand.
But the offense back in those days evolved. I mean, give Greg Davis so much credit.
They did, yes.
Because that offense changed so many times through the years, but it was based on who you had and who the special player
was. Well, and I go back to what I was saying. There is a difference even up front. There is a difference in the way that you block for somebody like Bijan versus the way that you block for somebody like Jonathan Brooks or Jadon Blue or Keelan Robinson. They are different types of runners, right? So it's no different than in Minnesota. When we were in Minnesota, the guys would block one way for Adrian Peterson, and when Chester Taylor got in the game, he's a totally different runner, so they knew they could block a different way. It was more downhill, push a guy around, where it was Adrian, like, if we miss a guy, just go to the next level because probably run him over.
But ultimately, did one guy make you look better than the next?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But then again, what happened when Adrian Peterson's gone and you got Cook back there? What do? You change things.
Because that's another great running back.
But because you have another style, I have to figure out what fits you.
Yes.
And I only figure that out is once I have you and I understand what you're good at and over a course of time. And that's the only thing I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is we still don't know what type of back. I don't even know what type of back Brooks is.
And you are exactly right.
Exactly. So you go into a game plan saying, this is what we've been running with these two backs.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with y'all two? And it's like, okay, did we figure out what they're really good at? I know they try to do different things, but you have to figure out what you're good at. It's no different than when you have different style of quarterbacks in the game. We know Ewers, is he a runner? He's okay. Hudson Card's better runner, but we know Ewers can use his arm better. So you just start trying to play with that. How do I use him differently than how I use Hudson Card?
And it's one of those deals where you're getting ready for a bowl game. You don't have the time to change up the whole offense because it's a run game, right? So this is going to be something that's going to have to be addressed in the offseason. Because even with the younger guys coming in, if you got a young guy that comes in and, you know, for example, let's just say Baxter. I mean, if he comes in, that may be a totally, let's run downhill.
So when I watch him on film, he reminds me a lot of Roshan. He's a 6'1", 6'2", 215. I think by the time he leaves the University of Texas, he's a 230, 235 pound back. So he's going to be downhill, mano a mano. If you bring a linebacker at him, good luck. And you see how he runs the ball now. He runs through tackles and he gets to the second level and third level, and then he uses his speed. It's going to be a different style of running.
Not to mention the new offensive lineman that'll be coming in. Obviously, Christian Jones is gone, so it's going to be another. Right. It's just going to be another timing issue that they're going to have to work through the offseason, because new faces always means there's going to be some inconsistency somewhere.
And there is no doubt in my mind that Keelan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks can be really good running backs.
No question.
I just really believe it's very naive to expect them to just. And I'm not saying you're saying that.
No, and I'm not saying.
But just to come in and they
by all means,
also unfair.
By all means,
and I don't think you're saying that.
By all means, Bijan is definitely special.
Yeah.
It's no different than when I see Jamal Charles. They are definitely special. The things that they can do when you thought it was a negative play, no question. But at the same time, it's like, if you want to be consistent, I think you have to say, okay, listen, I understand this as a coach, as an offensive play caller. I don't have that guy no more.
Yep.
And now I got to figure out, how do I make this work?
Absolutely.
And it goes back to what he says. Either you don't want to put that much pressure on your quarterback to say, I need you to throw 40 to 50 passes a game. I got to somehow, some way establish a run. And you saw today with Michael Penix Jr., when he struggled, they went to the run game. And every time it was 3rd and 4, 3rd and 2, whatever it was, we handed it off, and he's getting the first down.
And even if they're not as good at running back, they should be better at every other offensive position around that to offset the lost production. At the end of the day, though, it comes down to this. They're different. Running backs are different.
They are definitely different.
More coming up on Texas Game Day. Final Texas.